Ani Bojo. I'm Sherry Lawson, host of Indigenous Voices. We're still here. Today, my special guest is Dale Plett. She has done many things and has an interesting education as well, but she is most well known for her work in sports and recreation, most recently. Dale, welcome to the show.
Anine, thank you. It's so good to see you, Sherry. I love it.
I'm going to ask you, first of all, please, to introduce yourself in whichever way you think is proper.
Oh, for sure. Anine Bojo, Dale Dishnakaz, Rama Dojaba, Gigon Dodam. Hello, I'm Dale. I am from Chippewas of Rama First Nation from the Fish Clan, and it's so great to be here with my good friend Sherry.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit, Dale, about your education?
Yeah, I have a BA, a double major in recreation and marriage and family therapy, and liked school so much, went on to do my master's degree in marriage and family therapy, and then actually went on to do another master's degree in spiritual theology. I'm still a thesis short on that, and life has just taken me other adventures, so haven't completed that yet, but have hopes to either circle back to get that done or hopes to go on and do doctoral work maybe once my children are a little bit older.
And how old are they now?
My kids are 15 is my oldest. My middle son is going to be 12, and I think he told me the countdown is about 27 days. And my daughter, who's also coincidentally Sherry's granddaughter's best friend, she just turned 11. And so those are my three littles that I just adore.
And so obviously you're very busy. Tell us about some of the work you've done. If you were just going to tell us about the places you've worked and the jobs you've had, what should we know about that?
Yeah, I think I am a fly by the seat of your pants kind of girl, and I'm always up for adventure. And so I think that's just been the theme of my life, and being in the right place at the right time. And so I actually went out west to school to do my undergraduate work, and then ended up staying out in Saskatchewan for a good portion of my younger adult life, and did my BA there and my master's degree, and ended up starting my career out there teaching at a post-secondary level. So it's so crazy to me because I struggled in school, and then to end up starting in my career as a college university educator, professor, faculty is so crazy to me, even still today. So that's how I started out, and did a lot of marriage and family therapy, mental health counseling. I really enjoyed working in the mental health field and worked with a lot of post-secondary students. And one of the areas that I really enjoyed was working alongside and coming alongside young women that were recovering from disordered eating and looking for help to survive sexual abuse. And so those were the early years of my career. And when my husband was a basketball coach within the college circuit out there in Alberta, Saskatchewan. And when we decided to have our family and start our family, we decided it was time to come home here to Ontario. And my husband's from Alberta, but he's up for adventure as well. And we decided to come home, and thankfully I had the opportunity to work in my community. They had closed their recreation department for many, many years, and were wanting to get it started again because sport and recreation is just so important for everyone. But it's really important and is a foundational thing within our people as Indigenous people. And so it was really great to come back home and raise our kids. So worked in Rama as the recreation manager for many, many years, and got a really good, strong foundation of great staff. And some of them are now leading that department, which I'm really proud of, because I'm a big believer in pouring into the younger generation so that they can take over. And yeah, so really proud of that. And then once I had moved on, I just continued to work in sport, which is really incredible. And it's just taken me to a lot of just breaking down the glass ceilings as an Indigenous woman In 2018, I was elected as the very first female president in the North American Indigenous Games Council. So the North American Indigenous Games are the largest youth games in North America and one of the largest games in the world. Every 4 years, we have over 5,000 Indigenous athletes ages 12 to 19 descend upon some really great location within Canada from all over Canada and the United States, competing in 14 different sports. And so to be elected as the first female president in that 30-year history, and knowing that those games are also called in the recommendations and the calls to action of the TRC, was a really great honor for me. And since then, it's just only gotten more and more amazing to be able to go along and help different organizations and government agencies implement some of these calls to action within their own sport, within their own organizations. And so it's crazy. I would have never have thought this when I was living on the plains of Saskatchewan. So that's just a very, very quick Cliff's Note adventure of Dale over the last 15, 16 years.
Okay, so I know that when you were in Rama Rec, the recreation department had not been going for a few years. So you were totally new and fresh there. You had just come back here. You're looking at it with new eyes. Tell our listeners some of the types of programs you started that raised a few eyebrows.
Yeah, I had a great team. And the way I look at things is you just throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. And so I think one of the ones that made you, Sherry, and my boss, Dan, laugh the most, and it was actually one of our most successful programs, was dog obedience classes within our community. Because you hear, as Indigenous people, we always talk about res dogs and them running all over the place. And, you know, when I came in and talked to the team my first week, I'm like, let's think outside of the box and do things that you've never done. What are things that you'd want? And because I have a child that's on the autism spectrum, I'm a big believer in not just as a mother of an autistic child, but also as an Indigenous person. I think whenever you can add animals to anything, you do it. And so that to me is one of the most, even now, I laugh, and you're even laughing too, we ran that dog obedience class for about 3 or 4 years for people, and had waiting lists for that program. And it was just fun. Another one, I love paper and fountain pens and anything stationary. And Sherry would always tease me because her office was right next to mine. And she'd always tell me what a nerd I was. And I embrace that. I love it because she was a librarian. So, I mean, you don't get much nerdier than that, right? So the other thing that we had brought in was a calligraphy course. And again, we had a waiting list for participants in regards to that. And Sherry was in that with me as well, and a bunch of groups. And we tried to do as many different things as possible. We did equestrian lessons, which always filled up. And then we got to another tier of doing equestrian lessons for children with special needs. We did swimming lessons with a local pool here. So it was great to support a very local business. We did bowling. Our kids loved youth bowling. So we tried our best to think outside of the box of just things that we would be able to get all ages involved in. And I think for me, one of my favorite things, though, every year was our gift wrapping, event that we would have. We would have all the grandparents and aunties and uncles come to our mask arena, our community room, and we would buy gifts for 500 kids in our community. And all of the aunties and grandparents would come and they would wrap all of these gifts. We'd play Christmas music and have Heidi's scones and baking and some treats from Mariposa Market. And to me, I think, outside of all of the really great things we did, I think that was my favorite moment, because you had people coming in that didn't even benefit or really even go to the event, but they came because they just wanted to wrap those gifts and share that with their kids, their grandkids, their nieces and nephews, because our community didn't always have that. Those gifts. They didn't always have the money to be able to do that. I hear stories that Sherry used to share with me, or my mom or my Uncle Ted, about those lean years when they were growing up, of borrowing food from their neighbors. And so to me, that was my favorite event. But we tried everything. and we had so much fun doing it. And I'm really, really proud of what we were able to get started there, and to see that the work is continuing and they're bringing in even better, bigger and better ideas. To me, that's just so good, because that's what it's all about. You have that strong foundation and then you can continue on. So it's really great to see what's happening in that department now.
Okay, thank you, Dale. And I know as well that when you started that equestrian program, people were making fun of you, saying, come on, our kids don't need to ride horses. We walked through the bush from here to there. We didn't ride horses here. What are you going to call the program? Cowboys and Indians? Now, I remember you took a beating for that, but then once you had that waiting list, okay, we had to be done making fun of you after that.
Well, and then we ended up adding up for 2 weeks of summer camp later on, because it was just so successful. And because I'm a big believer in, if you're going to ride the horses, you need to learn how to feed them and muck out their stalls. And there's something about caring for another being or caring for nature, right? And it's true. We did take a beating. I took a beating, but at the end of the day, it's just so neat to see how that impacted so many of the kids that did those programs. And I'm just so grateful that the leadership of my community, even though they were like, what? They still let us roll with it and try these crazy things that had never been done in the community. So, yeah.
And let's talk for a minute about budget for all of this. If we're talking to somebody flying up north, or even within an hour of Toronto, a First Nations community, they're going to say, how did you do all that? We don't have money to bring in trainers for that. Tell us about where the budget came for these types of things working for Chippewas of Rama.
Yeah, a lot of the money actually came from the leadership of Rama, because I think they saw the value and the importance of how sport and recreation, it keeps people safe. It allows people to stay out of trouble. And so they committed a lot of funds, well, not a lot because it's recreation, but they did their best in supplying funds to this. And, in some of the other activities we did, we had a lot of fundraising for things like the Little Native Hockey League that we would go to every March break, during my tenure in the rec department, we really made it a priority to try and get a lot of that program have the fundraising done by the parents and families participating. And I'm so proud of those families that raised all the funds to be able to participate in that. And then just so grateful that we have a leadership that does place a priority on the wellness and health of our community, because I think really playing and recreation is such an important part of that, especially during the pandemic. And so that's where a lot of the money came from.
Okay. Now, let me take you to the NAIG again, the Aboriginal Games in Canada, and how it would move around every few years. What would be a typical day in there? Because I think a lot of our listeners will say, what, there's First Nations, there's Indigenous sporting stuff going on. There's sounds like mini Olympics that you're doing. What could you possibly do in a day in a job like that?
Yeah, well, it's so the North American Indigenous Games currently they were postponed. We were supposed to have them in beautiful Halifax with the Mi'kmaq territory, and we had 5,250 athletes that were slated to come to Halifax this past July. And so the games actually go on from the opening ceremonies is Sunday, and then the closing ceremonies is the following Saturday. So you have a whirlwind tour of a week of competition in 14 different sports, from your court sports, so basketball, volleyball, you have swimming, you have baseball, softball for girls. Like, you have 14 sports: canoe, kayak, track and field, like all of it. And so obviously it's a mass undertaking when you consider that you have 5,250 athletes plus their support staff, right? So their coaches, their trainers, the chaperones, because obviously, parents that are sending their children up from Colorado aren't going to be sending them up by themselves. They're chaperones as well, right? And so it's a huge mass undertaking, and it really inundates the whole city. In 2017, the NAG was held here in Toronto, and the economic impact that the NAG had on the GTA in 2017 was close to $50 million, which is incredible because you have aunties and uncles and parents booking hotels and staying. And so from sun up to sundown, there is competition in all of those different sports. And that's really what's happening from that Monday morning, first thing. And some of the competition starts Sunday night, right after the opening ceremonies. And so it is really busy. And then your gold medal games happen usually that last day of competition on either Friday night or Saturday morning before the closing ceremonies. And so you are hustling. And as staff and as chaperones and coaches, you are busy because you are also taking care of your athletes, right? And so it's just amazing. And it's incredible to see some of these kids. I'm so excited about Halifax because for so many of the kids, that'll be the first time and maybe the last time they ever see the Atlantic Ocean. And I just love Nova Scotia and the people of Halifax. They would give you the shirt off at their back. And so to know that our kids are going to have this experience, as the games have been postponed until 2023, as long as all goes well, I am so excited for the youth to have that experience of Canada's East Coast, because, some of the most hospitable and kind people. And so it's a really fun time, but a really busy time. And I'm sure for parents, it sounds like a nightmare, and it partly is, but man, after it's done, it feels good because it's an opportunity that lasts a lifetime for so many.
And I would expect that your opening and closing ceremonies aren't exactly what the mainstream would do in an event like this. Am I right?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's a little bit different. In 2017, the opening ceremonies were a little bit unique because there was tornado warnings and storm warnings. And so some of it had to be scaled down a bit because we were in an open arena. Rogers tennis, the tennis, I can't remember what the tennis
changes all the time.
Yeah. But it was incredible. We had one of the singers from the Black Eyed Peas as the headliner, and a tribe called Red. And it was just beautiful. And it's beautiful when you're looking in the arena, seeing all the different colors of all of the different provinces and territories and states that are represented. And, it's just really special because here you have kids that are coming together from all over North America, meeting new friends from all over. And there's that moving in your heart that's like, wow, I'm not the only one. There's people out there just like me having the same experience as me as an Indigenous person. And that camaraderie and just seeing that, I think, is just so impactful for a lot of the youth that have that opportunity to participate within the NAG.
Great. Okay, thank you. That'll be very interesting for people. Now, when you're working in the recreation world, whether it's working for Chippewas of Rama, getting our kids off the couch and off their video games, or with the seniors as well too, or the grown-ups, all those kinds of things, or whether you're working for NAG, what are some of the challenges that go with that in the whole area, in the whole field?
I think it's honestly, I think the challenges, no matter what, would have to be, it's just educating others in regards to our history. There's a lot of people that have misconceptions about who we are as Indigenous people. And I think really that is probably a lot of the biggest struggles that I have, is just sometimes having to go into spaces or meetings and have to educate about certain things as an Indigenous woman, as a proud Indigenous woman from Rama First Nation, and so it's not just locally, like it's at every level, right? And while most are so eager and willing to learn, you do run into those people that are not kind and not understanding. And so I think for me, that's a tough part. And then, so you couple that with trying to protect our kids, and trying to re-educate people that are feeling like that, because I'm trying to protect my kids and their friends so that they don't have to deal with the kind of racism that I did growing up, which is bad, but it's not as bad as it was when you were growing up, so it's just this systemic racism that's happening. It's just hard, and I think that's probably the most difficult piece of what I'm doing, no matter what space I'm entering in, whether, I that's what I would have to say in regards to that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're teaching at a university or arranging hotel rooms or finding an elder to do the closing ceremonies. You're going to run into challenges, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah.
I understand that at many points in your career, especially working for NAG, there's opportunities as a First Nations person to give gifts. We give gifts often, sometimes when we're asking for something, and sometimes when we're thanking somebody for something. And sometimes we give them a gift that we're going to ask them later for something, but they don't know that. Tell us about some of that gift giving recently and what effect it has had.
Yeah, so I sit on the Aboriginal Sports Circle. So it's the national Indigenous sport organization that represents all of the, we're negotiating funding and trying to get different things to happen for every province and territory within Canada. And so it was really great because the president of the organization and I had the opportunity to present to all of the federal, provincial, territorial sport ministers this past fall. I believe it was in October, or maybe it was January. It was just recently, within the last 6 months. And it went relatively well. No, it went really well. And it was just really lovely because we were able to share some of these really great success stories that's happening all across Canada. And as some may know or may not know, it's usually traditional for us to give a gift in regards to just, here we are in this new journey, and here's hoping, that gift of reciprocation and just hoping, that we can move forward in a good way. And so within our meeting, we were able to present to our Minister of Sport, Sport and Heritage, Mr. Gobo, with a star blanket that was made by one of my colleagues on the Aboriginal Sports Circle. In his community, he has a lot of elders that make traditional star blankets. And so we sent that to Minister Gobo. And I was recently watching something on the news, and in the background of his office, where you see my picture within his office space, there was the gift, the star blanket that we had passed on to him as a thanks. And here's hoping we can move forward in a good way, especially as we talk about the truth and reconciliation calls to action and whatnot. And so that was really special. I remember I was texting my fellow colleagues on the board, hey, Mr. Cabot has the star blanket in his office. And so, that is so good that it, because it meant something to us, and that it meant something to him. And he placed it somewhere that the world could see. And it was a place of prominence and respect. And I think for us, that just meant so much. And we're just so grateful, because I think that's part of what my call is just to really build bridges and really help people understand our journey and and fight for the importance of sport and recreation for our kids, because it keeps them out of trouble and it saves lives. So just really, really grateful for that, having had that opportunity.
Yes. Now, what are you doing now to fill your day? You're past president of NAG, but what are you working at now?
Yeah, so I'm past president of NAG, so I'm not having to do a lot in regards to that with the team. I'm just helping my good colleague, Shannon Dunfield out of Alberta. She's Métis and just spectacular. I'm actually working right now at the Barrie Native Friendship Center, and I am loving it. I have the opportunity to work with some incredible people. And currently right now, during COVID, we've been doing food baskets for the urban Indigenous community in Barrie. And so yesterday, actually, the team, they delivered 69 food baskets to different families in the Barrie area. So, you know, about 400 people, because food security is a thing, and we're in a COVID and a pandemic, and so it feels really good to be doing some really great work with the Barrie Native Friendship Center in that urban Indigenous area. And then, so that's my day job, and now I was just recently appointed to be the co-chair of the Indigenous Sport Development Working Group for Canada, for the Federal Sport Ministers of Canada. And so that's incredible. And so one of the, it's been really great. I've only had 2 meetings so far, but we've been able to really make some great strides and really advocate for things like the TRC calls to action and just really other important things like safety in sport, safety for our women and girls, and just really, really privileged to be asked to and selected to be that co-chair for this group, and to be able to make change is just really meaningful. So those are the big things that I'm doing these days, and just getting to speak at a lot of different types of organizations in regards to advancing reconciliation. So yeah, that's kind of what we're up to these days.
Thank you. Also, you've mentioned TRC several times, and for some of our viewers, that is the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, although in Indigenous communities, we call it TRC, and if you say it quick enough and write it quick enough, it's a trick. TRC. Dale Plett, I want to thank you for being my guest today. I think you've given our audience a peek into Indigenous sports and culture as well too, and how important that is, not just for our kids, but for theirs as well. For anybody who's thinking, what can they do in a community? This has really transformed many of our Anishinaabe communities. Dale, thank you so much for being my guest today. Chimiigwech.
Oh, miigwech. Thank you, Sherry, for having me.